We've checked in several times these last 2 weeks with Christine Brennan, who's covering the games for USA Today and ABC. One last time, I talked with her a short while ago, and I know that many of you will be happy to hear that no spoiler alert, I think I can promise this, is necessary for our discussion. Well, Christine, hello again. Before we get into summing up mode, I do want to ask you about one particular athlete, Usain Bolt, because this guy just strikes me as off the charts in terms of both performance and personality. Are you with me on that?
I completely agree with you, Jeff. It happened right behind me here in the track, and he's done the unprecedented, winning the 100 and the 200 at this Olympics, and of course winning it 4 years ago, the first to ever have a double-double in those two Olympic sprints. And Usain Bolt is really one of the great stories coming out of these games, as he was out of the Beijing Games 4 years ago. And you're right. I mean, he's saying he's the greatest of all time. Who can really argue? He's certainly, I think you can make the case, the greatest Olympic sprinter of all time. He's not necessarily going to win the gold medal for humility, however. All the me stuff, all the self-proclamations of greatness are, well, they're over the top, which is kind of the way he runs. So in many ways, I guess that's fitting. But his celebration the other night, as he took his time, he goes very fast for 200 meters, but then the rest of the way around the track to celebrate it can take a long time. It actually impeded and kind of got involved with one of the medal ceremonies. So that's something that is a little troublesome, but this guy has an ego bigger than the entire United Kingdom at this point, and I guess in some ways, who can blame him?
Well, so I know there's more to come, a little bit more to come over the weekend, but looking back on what you've seen, are there some standout, particularly any surprises that struck you and will stay with you?
I ended up going to the women's boxing venue, and I never thought I would go there. And first of all, women's boxing for the first time is in the Olympic Games. And I ran into two fascinating stories. Katie Taylor from Ireland. It seemed like the Irish delegation, every fan with an Irish flag was there for a female boxer, just cheering their lungs out for her. She did win the gold. And it was like the old days of prize fighting. They're cheering for their country person. In this case, it happens to be a woman and a female boxer. Same with Clarissa Shields from the United States, Flint, Michigan, 17 years old, also won the gold medal in boxing, the only gold for the U.S. in boxing, male or female, at these games. 17 from Flint, her dad's in jail. One of her friends was killed while she was here by a gunshot. She is living a life that many of us don't really know, and yet the joy for her, in spite of her difficult upbringing, to win the gold medal, that was just terrific. So, of all places, boxing, and women's boxing, but I think it shows what these games are really all about.
Well, it's interesting when you refer to the Irish going crazy for their boxer, because it seems as though different countries count success differently, right? There are different sports that are really important to one country or another.
Well, that's right. I mean, with the way we look at things with a U.S.-centric point of view, obviously the U.S. does very well in so many things and may well win the medal count. I say who cares one way or the other. It's the individual performances. But the U.S. is across the board. And then you're right. There are countries that come here and win a gold or two. Great Britain used to be that country that would win just a few golds until, of course, they hosted the games. And now they're third place in the medal count, and they're doing very well. And but I think that basically you're right. It's that we focus on the big nations, but some of those small nations, like the Irish story, those are some of the most compelling stories of these games, and we find them at venues all over town.
The Olympics, of course, in the run-up to this, a lot of worries about security, a lot of worries about traffic, all kinds of concerns. So what's it been like? What's it been like being there?
I think they've done a terrific job, Jeff. And coming in, many of us thought that there could be trouble here. It's such a melting pot. London, 8 million people, and the entire world showing up at its doorstep. And they've done a great job. And behind me right now are buses coming and going, and the transportation system has worked beautifully. It really has. The traffic has not been what we thought it would be. And then the actual events and the crowds, compared to Beijing 4 years ago, where the authorities were telling people to go home and get out of the public squares. Of course, the Brits have been saying, come into the public squares. So just the feeling here, very much like Sydney 12 years ago, in terms of a city holding a party and the world joining in. And I think that will be certainly one of London's legacies.
All right, so just real briefly, one or two highlights for you that are going to stay with you?
Certainly being at Wembley Stadium last night, 80,000 people watching women's soccer, the biggest crowd, Olympic crowd ever for women's soccer in the U.S. Coming back after last year's disappointment in the World Cup to beat Japan 2-1. That's the story I think that everyone can relate to women's soccer in the United States. And that story of redemption, of coming back 13 months later and getting the gold against the team that beat them at the World Cup. And that was a fun story to watch.
All right, Christine Brennan in London. Once again, thanks so much for all your reporting and talking with us these past couple of weeks.
My pleasure, Jeff. Thank you.